One day, a group of legendary adventurers went into battle with the Lord of Darkness to destroy the monster and secure the lives of all mankind. The head of the squad was a famous berserker named Yunha. The man lived solely for the sake of revenge against monsters. It turns out that when the protagonist was 6 years old, his parents died in a fight with dangerous monsters. When the man managed to reach the Master of the Abyss, his entire squad was dead. Exhausted and badly wounded, Inha decided to awaken the dungeon boss and fight him. At that moment, the monster opened its eye and defeated the adventurer with one attack. Inha began to think about the fact that humanity is not yet capable of defeating the darkness. The protagonist realized that he would soon die next to the main enemy of his life. At that moment, a healer from his group named Yujong comes to the man's aid. The girl cried and promised to heal the protagonist. Unfortunately, she had to use her main skill and rewind time back many years to keep Yuna alive. Suddenly, the protagonist awakens in the body of a newborn baby and realizes that with the help of Yujong's magic, he has been transported to his early childhood. At that moment, Yuna realized that fate had given him another chance to change his future and save his beloved parents. The protagonist in the body of a small child thought like a grown man, but his body did not allow him to do much. The boy could only roll over with difficulty, helped by Yuna's favorite older sister, Yuna. The main character didn't remember his sister well, but the only memory was when they were attacked by ruthless monsters. Then, the little girl promised that she would always protect her beloved brother. 9 months later, Yuna had learned a lot. The little boy began practicing using his mana and absorbing it from the environment. The protagonist also noticed that Yuna has a huge reserve of magical power. It turns out that a large amount of mana in a person's body can harm the host. Yuna realized this and decided to teach his sister how to use magic. After 4 years, the boy has matured considerably, and with it the time he spends outside the house has increased. Yuna took her little brother for a walk again. There, Yuna met a girl named Minjdi, who often bullied the little boy. The main character was not interested in children's games, but when he saw the happy smile of his favorite sister, the boy kept playing. After a fun time, the brother and sister set off for home. Suddenly, the couple is attacked by a wild dog and the little girl covers her brother with her hand. At that moment, Yuna remembers how Yuna protected him, just like she did now. Suddenly, the boy creates a terrifying aura around him and the wild dog runs away. Yuna is fascinated by the main character's abilities and asks him to teach her how to use mana. After a while, the main character teaches Yuna how to use magic. On New Year's Eve, Yuna's family is watching TV. Yuna's mother announces that the main character will soon be 6 years old and will have to go to kindergarten. At this moment, the TV is talking about the new age of South Korea. Yuna recalls that after mankind learned to use mana, they didn't know that the large amount of magical energy would cause a huge horde of violent mutants to attack the country and wipe out 30% of the population. A celestial maiden named Gale has created a squad of 12 players who are named after the zodiac signs. It is they who must defend the country. During the initiation of the legendary warriors, Gale used powerful magic and her mana spread throughout the country. Many people in South Korea decided to go outside to see the beauty of the new era. The main character's family went to the balcony and each member of the family began to pray and ask God for a happy destiny for them. 1 year later, Yuna was forced to go to kindergarten and went there every day. A grown man in the guise of a little boy was not comfortable being around young children. The protagonist found a children's library where there was constant silence. In addition to Yoon, there was a little girl named Hyen in the library. Suddenly, local bullies started hurting the girl and took away her precious hairpin. At that moment, the protagonist helps the girl and returns the thing dear to her. Suddenly, the little boy discovers that Hyen's body contains a huge amount of magical energy. The protagonist realizes that in the modern world it is necessary to have a large reserve of mana, and the boy decides to befriend Hyen. Upon returning home, the boy meets his mom, who found a homemade hairpin that Yunha made at school in his backpack. Also, the woman noticed that there were 3 crafts in the briefcase. At this point, the young man admits that he wanted to give one of them to his grandmother. It turns out that after the death of his parents, the protagonist was brought up by his own grandmother, who was able to provide for his life. Unfortunately, in his past life, the guy treated the old woman badly and did not show her his love, but now, Yuna wants to get closer to his grandmother. Maycame and the main character's family planned to go to his grandmother's house, but Yuna remembered that it was while traveling to the town where the relative lives that the family was attacked by a kraken. The protagonist manages to talk his parents into scheduling a trip to his grandmother's house on a different day. Suddenly, Yunhee's mother receives a call and is informed that her grandmother has fainted. After that, the parents still decide to go to their loved one to support her. The protagonist realized that when he changes the future of his family, something terrible happens. At that moment he panics, but quickly calms down and decides despite his age to fight the kraken and save everyone. A young boy arms himself with a utility knife and scissors. His main goal is to distract and delay the kraken until the 12 zodiacs arrive. In the evening of the same day, the whole family is traveling across the bridge. Yuna asks God that the dangerous kraken does not appear and they manage to pass the bridge safely, but at that moment, the dangerous monster attacks the people. The main character's family manages to get out of the car, but Yuna twists her leg. The father picks up his daughter and the family tries to flee the scene. Along the way, Yuna sees that besides the kraken, other monsters called divers have appeared. They attack people and kill them mercilessly. Yuna recalls that the 12 zodiacs arrived half an hour after the kraken destroyed the bridge. At this point, the protagonist pulls out a utility knife and scissors and orders his parents to stay put and wait for reinforcements. The little boy asks Yuna to protect his parents because the girl has learned how to use magic. The guy starts attacking the divers and eventually makes his way to the kraken and starts damaging it with scissors. With the help of his experience in battles, Yuna manages to distract the dangerous monster. Unfortunately, the protagonist quickly expends all his accumulated mana and falls down without strength. The moment the little boy loses consciousness, suddenly, Yuna appears and saves his brother. The girl uses magic that allows her to create a shield that keeps the pair safe from the kraken's attacks. Yuna also heals Yuna's wounds and replenishes his mana supply. Immediately afterward, the protagonist's sister faints and falls asleep due to the lack of magical power in her body. At that moment, Yuna once again fights a dangerous monster. 30 minutes later, one of the 12 zodiacs named Hyeonkal arrived on the scene. A man was obsessed with fighting dangerous players and monsters. He noticed a powerful mana flow and was greatly surprised when he saw 2 small children fighting a dangerous kraken. The man praised the brave protagonist and ordered him to retreat to secure his life. Suddenly, a kraken demolishes the pillars on which the bridge stands. That moment, a girl from the Zodiac squad named Harem arrives to help and she helps Hyeonkal and the children. In the end, the kraken was defeated and the protagonist and his sister were left unharmed. Harem wanted to help the children and heal their wounds, but she realized that Yuna used powerful magic and helped the little boy to hold back the dangerous monster. The protagonist does not allow the girl to touch her sister and then, Harem offers to go to the hospital. At the hospital, Yuna meets her parents and promises that she will not put her life in danger again. The next day, the main character's parents go to see the doctor who is treating their daughter. Yuna stays in the room with his sister. Suddenly, Hyunchul enters the room and suggests that the little boy join an academy that trains him to fight monsters and save people. The protagonist recalls his past life, when his life consisted of destroying dangerous monsters to avenge the death of his family. In the end, Yuna refuses the man's proposal and Hyunchul leaves. The player met with Harem and discussed what had happened. The girl was perplexed when the man decided to leave the children, who had amazing magical abilities. The next day, the family of the main character comes to his native grandmother. The elderly woman was very eager to meet her grandchildren, but the boys fell asleep in the car. Early the next morning, Yuna woke up in Yuna's tight embrace. He was disgusted by this, and at that moment he saw that his mother had hugged his father in the same way. The protagonist is happy to be able to go back in time and feel the emotions of his childhood again. A little boy ventured outside to get some fresh air. Yuna was thinking about his magical powers, and, suddenly, his grandmother appeared. The relatives start talking, and at that moment the main character's mother comes and brings warm milk. The woman asks the little boy what he wants to be when he grows up. Unfortunately, Yuna can't find an answer to this question. The mother and grandmother reassure the protagonist and state that he is too young to think about it. In the end, Yuna gives his grandmother a homemade flower that the elderly woman has placed in the hallway for guests to admire the beauty of her favorite grandson's gift. The protagonist and his family have returned to their town. Suddenly, Yuna's parents inform their children that they will soon have a baby brother or sister. Yuna is overjoyed at this news. At this moment, the woman approaches her son and the protagonist begins to cry and sincerely thank his parents for such a precious gift. At this time, the broken phone, which lies on the ground, reports about the attack of dangerous monsters. The girl says that the enemies can hide in crowded places, so the inhabitants of the city need to be careful. At this time, the protagonist is playing with his friends. Suddenly, Yuna senses danger and activates his magic powers. At that moment, a dangerous goblin appears and starts attacking the children. Yuna manages to save a little girl and fights the monster. When the protagonist was about to deliver the fatal blow, he was stopped by a teacher named Taeyo. The man grabbed the little boy and a few other children and took them to a building. Inside, Taeyo realizes that Haeon and another little boy have been left outside. At this time, the protagonist's girlfriend involuntarily uses magic and saves her young friend. The boy suggests that Haeon hide and wait for the adults. The girl obediently climbs the stairs, but the brave little boy decides to hold off the monster until the teacher arrives. He remembers Haeon being shown on TV and tries to summon magic, but at that moment he is attacked by a goblin. Suddenly, Yuna appears and saves the little hero's life. In the end, the main character managed to defeat all the monsters that were in the territory of the kindergarten. All the children were delighted with Yuna's abilities and thanked him for saving them. After a while, the little boy is interrogated by a serviceman. The man is amazed that the protagonist was able to kill a dangerous goblin at such a young age. Yuna tries to justify himself, but he fails miserably. A young boy is invited to receive a certificate of honor for bravery and service to his native country. At the meeting where the award ceremony was held, adults and children were present. Everyone admired the bravery of the protagonist, but Yuna was very upset. He realized that his parent would be scolded at him again for risking his life. Sometime later, a festival was held at Yuna Kindergarten. All the children of the group, which included the main character, participated in a play based on a famous fairy tale. When it was Yuna's turn to go on stage, people who were watching the performance started discussing the child who killed the dangerous monster. The parents of the other children think that the little boy is a danger to society. All this was heard by the main character. He became very upset, but at that moment his relatives and the newborn baby began to support him. In the end, the main character performed well on stage and the parents were delighted with their child. At that moment, the little boy's mother asked him again what he wanted to be when he grew up. The protagonist realized that he was still undecided, but suddenly he said that he wanted to become a warrior. The day came when Yuna and her friends went to school. On the first day, students have to greet each other. When it was Haeon's turn to tell about herself, the girl became very nervous. At that moment, the main character remembered being a guest at Haeon's house. It turns out that her father is going to be a very powerful man in the future because he has top-notch potion skills. When the boy realized this, he instantly proposed to Haeon to become best friends. Suddenly, a girl named Sina who is half-human shyly greets the entire class. It turns out that half-humans are hated in this world because they look like monsters. The protagonist and his friends passed the mana test. It turns out that Haeon came in first place, but Sina also excelled in her abilities. At lunch break, all the students of the school gathered in the cafeteria. Unfortunately, Sina couldn't find a free table and decided to approach a table where some kids who had rich parents were sitting. They had one free seat, but because the girl is half human, the kids started to humiliate and insult her. At this moment, Yuna remembers that there were good and kind half-humans among his allies. A few days later, all of the protagonist's friends, as well as his sister, gather for a mana suppression training session. Yuna had to find everyone, and they have to suppress their magic powers so that the young man can't detect them. After a while, the protagonist manages to quickly find everyone except Hyan. It turned out that the girl had entered the building to suppress her mana and trick her friend, thereby winning a competition to suppress her magical abilities. The room turned out to be a library, which was filled with many interesting books. Suddenly, the owner noticed a little girl, but he did not scold her, but decided to read a book for her. After a while, the protagonist finds Hyan and begins to tell her off. After Yuna sees that the girl was safe, he calms down. The little boy apologizes to the older man and tells his friend that it's time for them to go home. At this point, the owner of the books offers to take the boys home.